Hi folks, we're solving equation-based problems. So problem solving using RMT, Reciprocal Maths teaching, for solving problems that have equations involved in them. Let's have a look at an example as we go through the steps. This is pretty much how I want you to work an equation-based problem. Here's a sample problem. 3 consecutive odd numbers add to 159. What are the 3 numbers? Okay, so the steps for reciprocal maths teaching you may have seen before. And look, we're not going to just use guess and check. Guess and check should only be used when there's no other method to use. It's inefficient and it's a basic method. We want you to learn more efficient and more precise and sophisticated methods in maths. That's part of the point of learning maths. And the first phase is to predict, then the second phase is to clarify. In other words, when you've clarified it, you'll be able to paraphrase, which means write it in your own words. After that, we do the math. We solve. So we can see solve, we carry out, we come up with a solution after we've chosen a strategy or come up with a strategy. In other words, a plan of attack. The last step is we reflect. Is the answer correct? Is it reasonable? And does it make sense? Did we make any assumptions? Have we learnt anything from this? In the first step, predict, we reread the question. So let's do that. The problem says 3 consecutive odd numbers add up to 159. What are the 3 numbers? Right, so in the predict, you can see there that in predict it says in grey there, we make connections to any of our background knowledge. What is a suitable estimate for the question? What units should we use? Well, the last one first, there's not going to be any units because we're just after numbers. Estimate, well, maybe you could divide 159 by 3 and have a, they should be, roughly in that ballpark. And so maybe, they're going to be a bit over 50, those numbers. They'll be around about that, give or take. So, roughly 50. We could even write that down first. Okay, you can't really get predict wrong. It's just getting a bit of thinking happening. So, you could say roughly 50, perhaps, as a rough ballpark estimate. Make connections to your background knowledge. So, well, we can use algebra. And we might make x one of the numbers. X is one of the numbers. There's 3 numbers, the question said. It said 3 numbers, but it said consecutive. Now that brings us to the next point. We need to clarify a few things. Do you understand the language used? Well, consecutive. Now, if you didn't know what consecutive meant, you'd have to ask somebody in your group or get a dictionary, look it up online, check your textbook if that's relevant, ask your teacher. Okay, if you don't know what a word means, you need to find out. It's an important word. Consecutive means one after the other, according to a pattern. Alright, so there's a particular pattern in this. Okay, according to a pattern. Oops, that's a bit untidy. Pattern. Sorry about that. According to a pattern. Now the pattern was odd numbers. Okay, see, 3 consecutive odd numbers. So they are, how far apart are odd numbers? Well, so they're 2 apart, aren't they? Odd numbers are 2 apart. Okay. Alright. Well, what helpful information or clues are given in the question? Ooh, I don't know. It's basically, what are we given? It's 3 numbers and they're odd. So it's 3 numbers, they're odd, and they're consecutive. They're straight after each other in a pattern. So they're 2 apart. Okay. Anything else? Well, we've got to find 3 numbers. We have to find 3. Rightio. So rewrite the question in our own words. Let's see. Odd number plus next odd number plus next from next odd. Next from next odd. That all equals 159. So because sum means add. Alright, so that's something I should have put in clarify. So see all the, we're going to add. So see all of the thinking that goes before we actually even write anything, because if we do that thinking, the solving is quite easy. Let me see if I can get back and show you the question. See, there's not much written there in the yellow, but there's a lot of information there, surprisingly, in those 2 short sentences. Okay, so yeah, we're going to add it because it's a sum. Alright, we're ready to solve. I'm going to use algebra. Okay, and I'm going to come up with an equation. So algebra, or the real word is algebraic equation, if you want to know the actual terminology. Alright, if you don't know the terminology, don't worry too much. Alright, so that's my strategy, is use an algebraic equation and then solve. Okay, that's my strategy. Alright, well, I've got to come up with that equation. I'm going to say let the smallest number be, I'm going to use x. You can use any symbol you like. Let the smallest number be x. Now, if we've got x as the smallest number, the next one would be next odd number. Well, it's not going to be x plus 1 because that's the next number. The next odd number will be x plus 2. You think about odd numbers like 3, 5, 7, 9. They're all 2 apart, aren't they? To go from one to the next, you've got to add 2 every time. That's the next odd number. The next odd number after that is x plus 2 plus another 2, which is x plus 4. So the sum of all those would mean that we've got these 3 numbers here all added together, and that equals 159. Okay, well, let's go through and see if we can simplify that. We can, because we have algebraic skills. X plus x plus x, that's 3 groups of x, so we can write that as 3x. We've got some constants. We've got a 2 here and a 4 there. That makes 6 if we collect like terms. 3x plus 6 is 159. Okay, now we can solve that. That's a 2-step equation. You can solve it with a flowchart if you're still in that phase, or if you're ready to solve it vertically, you can do that. So we'd have to go 3x plus 6 minus 6 is 159 minus 6 is 153 on the right side, and plus 6 minus 6 just leaves 3x by itself. Then we have to divide both sides by 3, so we have 153 divided by 3. On the left side we have times 3 divide 3, cancel each other out, they leave just 1, so 1x, or just x in other words. 153 divided by 3, well, I know that 15 is 3 times 5, so 150, it'd be 3 times 50, and another 3 on the end makes it 51. So that is the smallest number. Okay, so the next number then is 51 plus 2 is 53, and then the next one would be 55, next odd number. So we have numbers are 51, 53 and 55. Alright, last phase, reflect. Is the answer reasonable? Well, we said back when we started that in the predict phase, see, this goes full circle, this process. In the predict phase, we would expect a number around about 50, roughly. And yes, we do have numbers around about 50, 51, 53 and 55. So we're ready to look at the reflect. That is reasonable based on, yes, around 50. The numbers are around 50. Yes, they are reasonable. Is it correct? We can check that. We can check the reasonableness of our answer by checking, because let's see if it works. The question said, if we look at the top, consecutive odd numbers add to 159. What are the three numbers? Well, let's see if they add to 159. Okay, we check it. 51 plus 53 plus 55. What does that equal? 50 times 3 is 150, plus 3 plus 3. Sorry, I've written a 53 and I should have written a 55 there. 55. Try again. 51, 53, 55. That's 150 plus 9 is 159. Yes, it works. So it is reasonable, and no assumptions were needed to be made in this one. Sometimes questions need assumptions, but this one is fairly straightforward. Haven't learned any new skills, but I've got to practice my algebra and I've got to check it, and I know my answer's right. Good times.